How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Dead Jester Productions podcast, episode number 210. I'm your host, Joshua J. Moskers, joined this week by a special guest, Rennie, or Meatwedge, of the Replay Rewind podcast.
Hi.
Thank you for being
here. Thank you. Actually, it's Meatwedge.
Meatwedge. Oh, I messed it up. Oh, Jesus.
That's okay.
This is what happens. I my handwriting went downhill when I was in college, taking so many notes. And now I write things down. I think it's been 2 minutes since I wrote it down. I've already screwed it up. Off to a great start.
No worries. It's definitely a real name that makes a lot of sense, so.
Yeah. But thank you for being here. I'm really happy to have you here.
Yeah, thank you.
But why don't you tell people a little bit about yourself, what you have going on, your podcast, things like that?
Sure. Like you said, I have a podcast about children's movies, which is probably my most exciting thing that's happening right now. I'm also a nanny, and I used to be a cake decorator, so I feel like I have a lot of, interesting, different jobs in my past.
Nice. So I guess I'll start with this, before we... I do want to ask about the nanny stuff, because I find that fascinating.
Yeah.
So, what got you into, baking? Was it cooking, in general, or is it baking specifically that you really got interested in?
Yeah, just baking. Okay. For some reason, in my family, I just became around 14 or 15. I feel like I made a cake for someone's birthday, just out of a box, baked it. And they were like, hey, you did great. That's your job from now on.
So you can follow instructions on a box.
Right. Well, my dad's a great cook, but he's never been a baker. He doesn't like to bake. He tells us that every opportunity. And it's we know, it's fine. And so it just became that was my job. And I actually was no, this is actually really fun. And so I just started baking from there. And I always wanted to do it professionally, but it is one of those jobs that people don't want to hire you if you have no experience. And of course, how are you supposed to get it? So I actually was working at a video game store, and one of our regular customers came in, and she was just like, oh, I had to decorate so many cakes today, and that's not even my job. And I was like, well, girl, what do you mean? Tell me more. And she was like, oh, I manage the Walmart bakery. And I was like, give me a job. And so she did. And so that got my foot in the door. And then I just worked at several different bakeries after that, decorating, because it's just, I don't know, it's a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I fall on the side of cooking as opposed to baking.
Yeah.
My girlfriend they'll make a bunch of things, homemade fudge. They'll make cakes, brownies, things like that.
Yeah.
But I very much fall into the category of cooks who just sort of throw ingredients together because I think it'll taste good. I don't really follow recipes.
Yeah, there's a lot more room for experimenting, being I don't know, let's try it out. Whereas with baking, you're it exploded. You have to...
It exploded. It's inedible. Let's try something else.
Yep. I actually just threw a gingerbread house decorating party for 8 of my friends. And so I made 9 gingerbread houses ahead of time. And then we all put them together and everybody got to decorate them.
Nice. What do you do with the gingerbread houses then when the season is over?
Well, I made one and my husband made one, and we are eating his, and mine is left for... Because he's like, yeah, we can eat it. It's fine. I threw in the towel. I want to eat it. And I'm like, mine is so beautiful. I don't want it. So thankfully we have 2.
We had done a family gingerbread. There was 4 of us that did this number of years ago, where we did the obviously we didn't make them from scratch. We just bought the kits at Target or something.
Right.
And they're fairly good size, probably 8 to 10 inches tall or whatever, maybe. Yeah. And we made that, and then I got distracted and started eating it while we were assembling them. I'll admit it. They kept theirs, and then I didn't realize the one family member took it home and just held on to it and put it on a paper plate and wrapped foil around it, and then just stuck it in the attic.
Oh,
and
no.
The next year, we come back and they're like, "Oh, here's my gingerbread house that we made last year," and I was like, "That is terrifying that you still have that."
I don't think you're supposed to keep it.
No.
New Year's rolls around, you throw that shit out. That's
yeah. I'm like, you realize it's food. It does spoil. It gets mold. You're not using small pieces of timber here.
Right. If you want to do that, make it out of cardboard and then
something.
Pull it out every year. But ew, gross.
Yeah, I'm like, that is icing on it. That's
yeah,
it's dairy.
Yeah. Oof.
do you have like a favorite thing to make in baking wise, or?
For a while I was super into cheesecakes because
Mm,
they do have a little bit more room for like experimentation. Once you get that like base recipe down and figured out, you
mhm,
can kind of, get weird with like what you put in it as far as flavorings go. So for a
okay.
while I was super into that. Now I'm kind of into, which is like baking adjacent marshmallows, which is like the
Interesting.
same thing.
Yeah.
Whereas like you get that base, you get like a good vanilla marshmallow figured out, then you can get like real weird, with like what you put in there.
I've never even considered baking marshmallows. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, those are
Is there
more
just like a
like
mold that you use for this then? How does
no,
this work?
I mean you can put them in a mold, but mostly like you just put them in you like cook them down and then they need to like whip for forever and then you just put them in a baking tray and let them set up overnight
Mhm.
and then you just flop them over and cut them into squares or whatever weird shape you wanted, I guess. Or you could
Interesting.
put them into like a silicone mold if you felt like it.
Interesting. This is fascinating. I'm gonna have to look into this. I've never even thought of doing something like that.
Oh yeah, they're super easy and I mean they're really good when you make them homemade. They're a lot softer
Mhm.
and I don't know. I think they're excellent. I haven't made any that will hold up to being roasted though. They kind of fall apart in a fire. So obviously that is a huge part of the appeal of marshmallows. So I'm still working on
I
that,
don't
but
create a lot of fires in my house, so I
sure.
think I'm okay in that regard. But I mean, every once in a while, the pan gets a little hot in the stovetop, and I leave somebody else in charge of it. Not to throw anyone under the bus, but every, but yeah, no, I don't know. It's interesting. I try and like branch out with some things. Like I said, I focus a lot on like the actual cooking,
Mhm.
like dinners and like meals. But we branched out this past like summer, made a bunch of like homemade like ice creams,
Yeah.
gelatos, stuff like that. And yeah, it is nice being able to like make all of your stuff homemade as opposed to going out and buying like a I was gonna say a gallon of ice cream. I don't know if they've even sold a gallon sized container of ice cream in my lifetime. It's all like 1.5 pints or whatever or liters.
Oh yeah, you can get those big like gallon buckets with the plastic handles that you
Oh,
used to
that's
see at
true.
like
They do.
birthday parties.
Yeah, they do have that. Yeah, but
Yeah.
like just like sorbetto, like stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
I love making that stuff at home because it's like you get just as much and it's
Yes.
cheaper. Like we do, I
Yeah.
particularly like key lime gelato. It's my favorite,
Ooh,
probably.
that sounds good. Yeah, I used to work at a restaurant that we made our own gelato in house, and we made
Nice,
a strawberry basil sorbetto that was just like,
nice.
this is what summer should taste like, like
Hmm.
it's so fresh and so sweet. It's so good.
I don't think we made any strawberry one. I know we did watermelon. I made her watermelon
Nice.
sorbetto because she loves that. We've
Yes. I
done
mean, any
like
fruit can be enhanced with basil.
yeah,
Just throw it in there.
did that. Like also obviously like chocolate, like
Hmm.
vanilla. We did a white chocolate one. I did a mint chocolate peanut butter. Just keeping it.
Yeah.
I like gelato in particular because it's like that little bit of creaminess to it. It's
Yes.
fantastic. Um, but is there so obviously focus on the baking? Is there a reason you maybe aren't as interested in the cooking side of things?
I do like to cook. I do that also.
Okay.
I just am more like I'll follow a recipe. I'll make some stuff up, but I don't
Mhm.
know. There's something about baking that's really nice. I think my struggle with cooking is I can make one thing at a time, but trying
Yeah.
to get like a whole meal to come together and all be
Mm,
like hot and ready at the same time
yeah.
is like is where I fall short because I'm like, okay, I'm focused on this thing, and then I'm like, oh my god, I didn't leave enough time for that, or I left too much time, or whatever. So
Yeah.
that's what
That's
gets
one of
me.
the issues like with the like where we're at now. Like our house is nice, but like when we move, I've considered building in our next place, but I feel like
Yeah,
that's gonna be too much of a hassle.
yeah,
But yeah, I just need more kitchen space because like right now it's fine. It is like compact enough that I can manage everything. Like you said, like having all the different pieces coming together and still
hmm
be hot at the same time. But yeah, it's like managing a kitchen almost to an extent, like an actual restaurant kitchen where it's
right.
like, all right, I'm gonna do this. I'm doing this. All right, take this pan, clean this, get it out of the way, quick. Like just maintaining everything at once, which is,
Yes.
I mean, by the time people hear us, we'll be long past this. But like for the holidays, like we do 7 fishes on Christmas Eve
Hmm.
with my girlfriend's side of the family, and
Yeah.
that's a whole process.
Oh, I bet. Yeah.
It's like, all right, get this pan in, get it out of the oven now. All right, put this one in, swap this out, put this on top of the stove top. All right, keep this warm, put this over here, put it in the microwave just to keep it from cooling off or whatever. It's
Right. Yeah,
It's a
that
whole lot.
sounds like so much. I mean, I recently bought one of those ovens that, like, I have 2 ovens on top of each other.
Hmm.
So that's nice. That's always been my, like,
Nice.
baker dream,
Yeah.
you know, where I'm like, now I know I've made it. I've got 2 ovens. So, I mean, that would
Yeah.
probably help, but other than yeah, I can't imagine. And no, you're totally right. Every time I go look at a house, I'm always just like, yeah, this house is nice, but who designed this kitchen? It's like the kitchen is always an afterthought, you know, like, yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, whatever. There's a sink and a counter. What do you want? I'm like, I need space for an island. I need
Yeah.
did you even think about this counter space? This corner is useless, you know, like
It's like they designed the rest of the house, and then it's like whatever space is left, that's where the kitchen is now.
yeah, it's like you
Yeah.
should design the kitchen first. The other rooms are just squares, you know? Like
Hmm.
it's not that hard. This one
Yeah.
needs some thought.
Yeah. I get comments from people I talk to sometimes because I want a flat top in our kitchen. So I
Mhm.
think that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, I don't know that it's a very realistic idea,
Whatever, who cares?
but yeah, stuff like that would be awesome. It's just like
Yeah.
easier to clean. Like I'm like, this would be amazing. Just that, all the cooking space. I just need counter space in general. We just
Yes.
bought, especially now for I just had a cutting board. One of the companies I work with is a woodworking company. So I just had them make me a giant, like 3 foot by 2.5 foot cutting board.
Nice.
Uh,
Yes.
and or I forget what it is. It might be a little bigger than that even. But it's this giant like exotic wood cutting board, and I put it out, and it's like half the size of our kitchen island. I'm
Mhm.
like, this is pointless.
Yeah. Now I need a
This
bigger
island
island.
isn't big enough. Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's always and I do have a bad tendency, especially when I was decorating cakes, like my coworkers would always be like,
Mhm.
"Get your stuff off of my table." And I'm like, "But I don't have enough room." There is never enough room. I'd always be like, "Yeah, you've heard of man spreading. I am cake spreading. Like this is that part of the table belongs to me. This table is mine. Over there is mine." Like I'm really bad about it. So
Yeah,
never enough counter space.
especially the way I make dinner. It's like I get every ingredient out, I set them all on the counter at the same time. And
Yes.
it's like if I have the cutting board there, it's like that takes up however much space. But it's
Yeah.
like,
Well,
all
you
right,
gotta, because
yeah.
otherwise you're halfway through and you're like, I don't have this thing I need.
Hmm. Yeah. And so it's like getting everything as prepped as possible. So when I'm
Mhm.
making it, there's the fewest distractions as possible,
Yep.
fewest dirty dishes to set off to the side. Cause I'm one of those people that just I clean dishes as I'm working because I don't like having stuff left over.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, so this is done stirring. I've got 15 seconds. Quickly wash this pan, back to stirring, mix and match in between.
Yep. You either need,
Oh,
like, a sous chef who knows exactly what they're doing, or it's
mhm.
like, "Get out of my kitchen." Like, either you come in here
It's
and
more of the
you
latter.
yeah. Yeah, because it's either, like, you have to anticipate my next move. Like you said, like
Mhm.
running a kitchen where it's like, you
Yeah.
either better be exactly on the same page or just get out of my way because you're standing in front of the sink again.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the dog is a terrible sous chef,
Oh
I
my
tell you what.
god. Yes.
He's like, "How about I sit directly I'll just lay down on the floor directly behind you while you're standing at the stove. Is this
Please
most
drop
convenient for
something.
you?" Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I worked, in a restaurant right when I finished high school. I was just, like, dishwasher. I didn't do a whole lot of anything related to
Mhm.
food prep, but they had me do it was a weird combination. They had me doing dishwashing. I didn't bust the tables or anything. I just dishwashing, and then they'd have me go in the back, and it was a Mexican restaurant. I'd go in the
Mhm.
back, and they had one of the, potato presses for french fries. So I'd do
Yeah.
that. I'd clean them all up and everything, and then I'd make the salsa, and that's what I would do. And I was like, "This is an interesting combination, but whatever, I'll roll with it." It
Yeah.
was fun,
I guess
except for the absolute stench of dishwashing was awful.
sure. Yeah, that's I worked at well, I don't work there anymore. I think I can say it. I worked at Whole Foods
Oh,
and
okay.
our like the bakery was right next to the dish pit.
Hmm.
So yeah, that same like it is hot in there and it smells terrible.
Well, I mean, I don't know what the setup was like there. I only have experience with one restaurant kitchen, but like in my experience, like I said, it's just you put it through like the big square dishwasher, like an express cleaner.
Mhm.
But we're sitting there like spraying them off with like a pressure washer essentially, and so you
Yeah.
just have this mist of like dirty water up in the air, so it
Yep.
just clings to your clothes and your hair and everything. So it was
Yep.
disgusting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hope I lie to myself in that yeah, real like fancy restaurants don't do this, but of course they do.
They do. Yep. It's
Yeah.
no matter where you are, the dishes are always gross. Fortunately, I mean
Yeah.
they always liked us in the bakery because we were like, well, all of our dishes smell good. So,
Yeah.
you know, none of this is gross. It's all just like sugar and cake. You're welcome.
Exactly. Yeah. Do you have like a goal for like baking wise of like this is something I'd really like to do at some point in the future?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I thought for a while that I wanted to have my own bakery. I don't know. if you look at my past job history, I'm very much like, that was fun and interesting and I tried it and now I want to do something completely different. So
Mhm.
I don't really have anything that I'm like, this is what I want to do for forever.
Yeah.
My dream job would be to do whatever I want for the next 6 months to 2 years and then just quit doing that and do something else without any kind of like gap in getting paid, like
Yeah.
having to work up to like a certain amount. Just like pay me a living wage and let me do whatever. I'll work. Just let me do whatever dumb shit I want to do at the
Mhm.
time. So as far as baking, not really. I think it would be very cool to, this is going back to like being into marshmallows right now, own a marshmallow cafe where it's like you just come in and each table has like a tiny little like fire where you
Mhm.
can sit around with your friends and just like roast marshmallows that you get that are like all these different flavors or whatever. So I think
Yeah.
that'd be very cool. But again, I have
Interesting.
to work on this recipe that holds up to being roasted.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, there's always that line of like, at what point does your hobby become ruined by having it be your job? Which is
Yes.
always something I was like concerned about. Like, I enjoy, I mean, obviously the podcast, I've been doing it for over 200 episodes.
Hmm.
Like, I just enjoy talking to people, meeting people, and like learning things about like their backgrounds and their areas of expertise.
Yeah.
And like, so far, I've not had any burnout, which is nice. And I
Hmm.
obviously, I mean, off podcast wise, I do a lot of, freelance work, working with different people on different projects and stuff like that for marketing. And again, that's just more of the same, essentially, just meeting
Yeah.
the people, learning more about it. It just requires me to put in more effort as far as, researching what it is they're doing and how I can help them. But it's a ton of fun. But, I still have a day job to make up for extra expenses because freelance is not a guaranteed source of income, obviously.
Sure.
But I know like a lot of number of people I know personally that have opened up restaurants, who have a passion for cooking, and it's exhausting because instead of just being able to like come home and mess around with food and like cook something cool, it's all right. I have to get here, get the restaurant like all prepped up in the middle of the morning, essentially.
Hmm.
Get everything up and running, and then they're just working like 18 hours a day,
Yeah.
just struggling away, hoping that it works out.
Yeah,
And it's
absolutely.
yeah, it's a lot. It's exhausting.
It is.
Um,
Yeah, I've worked in restaurants too where it's just you just like there's so much that goes into it and it is
mhm,
constant. Like the restaurant that I worked at where we made gelato, I was there on day 1. Like I helped open that restaurant and I was there for
yeah,
about a year and just like this, yeah, like 14-hour days when we first got
mhm,
started and we're like finding our groove and what's going to work out and what's not. And then
mhm,
just, like, go home, go to bed, and go do it again, like, I absolutely did not go home and bake anything,
yeah,
So, like and that's actually the same thing, it's why I stopped working at Whole Foods partially because it was just the stress of I still liked making the cakes, but the stress of everything else
mhm,
was just taking all the fun out of it, and it was like, I don't ever wanna look at another cake again, and that's you don't want this thing that you love to become something that just, like that you
exactly.
hate because of oftentimes because of, like, outside factors, like I said, it
Mhm,
was just, like, the corporateness of
for
working
sure,
at
yeah,
this
yeah.
big grocery store that was, like, you have to have, this many things done in a day, and it's like, there literally is not enough time, like, I don't know what you want from me.
It becomes centered around the business side of things as opposed to the
Exactly.
creative enjoyment of it. And
Yeah.
I've there's so many people I've talked to that have that sentiment about things, where it's like I just want to come in and be creative and really just let ideas flow, and I think I could make interesting stuff. But at the end of the day, you know, it's not a smart business decision because it's like this is taking time and money
Mhm.
away from, from the business as opposed to just me being able to enjoy myself. And yeah, it's weird. I mean, obviously there's a lot of people out there who are fortunate enough to be able to do something they really enjoy for a living and not have it ruined. But
Yeah.
it's hard to be in that situation and still make a living.
Yep.
Um, but I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic. But obviously, one of the other things I wanted to touch on too was kind of switching gears. You worked as like a nanny. How did you
Yeah,
get
that
into
is
that
my
from
current job.
baking? Okay, yeah.
Well, I've also always, like, had 2 jobs, like, my whole life. I usually have 1 or 2 I mean, I usually have 2 at least. So, it was one of those things I was like, "Yeah, I'm working here, but you can always use extra money," So I had it was just something that interested me, like, being a nanny and getting to hang out with children. I was not in a place at the time to like have my own kids. So I was like, I like hanging out with kids. They're very cool.
Yeah.
And it just seemed like, especially, if you just have like one kid and they're like 8 months old, super
Mm-hmm.
easy. You just kind of sit with them. So I was like, that would be fun. It seems interesting. Again, like I said, just what else can I do? That seems like
Mm-hmm.
fun. Let me see if I can try it. And so I knew a girl who was working with a family, and she had two part-time families, and she had been giving an opportunity to go work with this one family full-time for like a lot more money. And so she was like, I'm taking that, but I would like to find someone cool to take over my two, part-time families. And she's like, I know you said you had interest in, getting into this business. So why don't you come meet these people and I'll vouch for you. Again, it's another like area where people are like, you have no experience watching kids professionally. I don't know if I want you hanging out with my kids. And it's like, but I promise I'm cool. I just have
Yeah.
never done it before. So just having this person that I knew being like, yeah, come hang out with them, see if, if you guys click, if the parents like you. And so she worked for an agency that was kind of like helped me get in that direction. She was like, I know this girl, she's really cool. And so then I worked for them for a couple of years until the pandemic happened and their mom lost her job. And so she was like, well, now I'm home all the time. We don't need you. You're great, but
Yeah.
I'm home now. So I've had a couple different families since then. And now I'm working with this family. I've been with them for 2 years and they're awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's I obviously don't have experience in being a nanny of any sort, but it seems strange. Like I don't know what the situation is, and I don't want to pry too much if it's not a good idea.
Sure.
But like how does the dynamic work of just going into these places and being like, hi, I'm like your nanny now. Like how does this dynamic work between you and the kids? Like it.
Yeah, it is kind of strange. I got lucky in that especially the family that I'm working with now, they have 2 boys, and the older one is 4, so he was 2, about to turn 3 when I started working there. And 2-year-olds are just kind of like, whatever,
Yeah.
sure. Oh, you now you live here, okay. And
Mhm.
then their other kid, she was actually still pregnant when I interviewed with them, so he hadn't even
Okay.
born. So as far as he knows, I've been there his entire life.
Yeah.
So, but it can be interesting because I've also worked with older children who are like, that first family that I worked with, they're very much like, well, we miss our other nanny. What happened to her? Like, you're cool, but where'd she go? And why are you in charge of us now? And
Yeah.
so,
Interesting.
yeah. And it's a weird feeling a little bit too of like, I don't know, you are in charge, but you're not like the ultimate in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's the most difficult hurdle of like, you have to listen to me, but also I have to listen to your mom.
Yeah.
I don't know.
They get upset and they're like,
Kind of weird.
I'm going to go tell on you to the person who pays your bill.
Right.
Okay.
I have had
Please don't.
one kid jokingly be like, you're going to get fired. And I'm like, okay, bye. Yeah, then you'll never see me again. They're like, oh, wait, no, we don't want that. But the family that I work with currently, at least, is not home. The other 2 that I worked with, their parents would be home sometimes, which that's the weirdest.
That's strange. Yeah.
For me is that it's just like, they're working from home or whatever, but something happens and they're like, oh, I'm gonna go ask dad. I'm like, no, don't. He's like, we have to just pretend like he's not here. But yeah.
And then they wind up on CNN or whatever where they walk in on their dad giving
Right.
a speech.
You're like, oh no, I'm gonna get in trouble.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's strange. Like we don't have any kids. The closest thing I have to like babysitting in general was actually my little brother who's adopted.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm 29 and he is 10. So there's a very
wow.
large age gap there.
Yeah.
And they adopted him when he was like 1, I guess. He came through like the foster system and then they applied to fully adopt him.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so it's weird. Like as far as he knows, I've been around, his entire life.
Right.
From my perspective, it's like there's just this newborn child that has no relation to us who is just suddenly in our life.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, I guess I would have been 19 at the time when they adopted him. It was weird because I'm like, I'm helping. I mean, I didn't live with my dad and stepmom, so I just go out to visit them, and it's like, okay, I guess I'll just help with the infant that's
Mhm.
here currently. This is a weird
Yeah.
dynamic,
Yeah.
but yeah, it is weird. Like I said, that's my only experience with like watching like someone grow up has been my
Mhm.
little brother, and I don't know. It's nice being at the age where I can actually like appreciate that, as opposed to having been, like a child myself at the time. I
Right. Yeah,
probably wouldn't have
it's
meant as much.
it's so cool to watch them grow up, and especially, like I said, this baby that I've known his whole life is
Mhm.
he's just started learning to talk, and so it's just like, "Oh my god, he said this thing," you're as excited as, the parents are, and watching them
Mhm.
get, I don't wanna say smarter, but, learn more
Yeah.
things and, like, have more interesting opinions and start having their own opinions is just very cool. Very cool to
It,
watch kids grow up and become little people, I don't know.
is there like a moment like obviously like if parents aren't around there or watching them like those moments that like parents miss out on? Is there ever like what is that like? Explain to like the parents like, oh, you missed out on this today, sort of thing. Like obviously like if a parent was gone and the baby just started like walking or like starts speaking or whatever, I'm sure they're around
Yeah.
enough that they see these moments as well. But
Sure, and there's usually, some it's not like one day they have no interest in walking and the next day they're running around the house.
for
There's some
sure,
lead up
yeah.
to it and they're like, "Oh, I
Mhm.
think it's gonna happen." But, I've fortunately only ever had like one baby where it was like, his first steps anytime
I see.
soon.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it happens all the time where people who work all the time, and have a nanny like miss really important things, but
Mhm.
you just have to, I don't, if you can get it on video, I guess, do that or just communicate with parents. Or sometimes I think you just lie and just say, I think that they're going to do this thing, pretty
Yeah.
soon. Or it seemed like he was trying to do this. And then you just let them experience it for the quote unquote first time.
Yeah.
Because, like, who
Yeah.
cares? At the end of the day, they're not your kid, it's their kid, and they should get to experience that, and you're like, I
For
mean, you're
sure.
excited for them too, and you're like, "Okay, I got to have it, and that's our little private moment, but then we'll tell your mom it didn't happen yet."
Yeah. Yeah. In my personal experience, it's funny because like obviously with my little brother, it's like in the family. So it's like, okay, it's I'm more of a part of this than I would be like watching someone else's kid.
Mhm.
Trying to and not in a malicious way either, but just like plant the seeds for ideas with him. Like, no, you are really interested in soccer. Like
Yes.
you're this is something you're really interested in. I'm telling you this as your
Yes.
older brother. Like you need to understand that this is how this is going to be.
Mhm. I mean,
Yeah,
selfishly, and I think
yeah,
some people might get mad about it, but selfishly, I think that's the coolest thing about having children, being around
yeah,
young children, is you get to be like, "No, let me introduce you to some cool shit." Like, "Oh, you've never
yeah.
heard this band? Oh, we're into this now." You get to form their little brains, but also kind of, bigger things like that.
Mhm.
Just be that person who maybe is more accepting for them than their parents might be, or
Yeah.
just introducing new ideas to them. So
It's weird. Your kids are into baking too. Every kid I've ever watched has been
yeah,
into baking.
it's so strange. No, I'm
I
very
it's
upfront
weird. They
about
weren't
that.
into it before I showed up, but
Yeah, I'm like, "Oh, we're gonna be making stuff." Like, that's
yeah.
my idea of a good time. I like to color and I like to bake, so that's what we're doing.
Mhm. Yeah. I know like with my little brother too, like I joke, but he does enjoy like soccer, but like we
Mhm.
try and get him invested in things that are either like educational or uh like outdoorsy to an extent where it's like let's just get him active. Let's
Yeah,
get him, learning things as opposed to let's sit him down inside and have him play a video game all day. And
right.
I mean, anyone that listens to the podcast here knows like we definitely play video games.
Sure.
Like it's something I enjoy, but it,
But just
I
multiple
want,
interests, I want you to also like this
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
And part of it too is like I don't want to sit him down and be like dictating like what like we think he should be into
Mhm.
or not into. It's like it's just like guardrails when you're bowling. It's like we'll just
Yeah.
keep you on track. We don't need to
Yeah.
force the ball to go in one way or another specifically.
Well, and 2, I mean, you can introduce things, like you said, you can
Mhm.
plant seeds, you can give opportunities, but at the end of the day, they're gonna like what they like, they're gonna
Mhm.
be who they are. You can try and influence and guide, but there's only so much that you can do, and they're just gonna, if he
Yeah.
doesn't like being outside, ultimately that's his decision and he's going to come to that on his own. But like he's, if he'd never been introduced to that, he might not know it was a possibility. So I think,
Yeah.
it's just more about like introducing possibilities, being like, hey, check out this thing. I really like it, and trying to influence a little bit.
And we can always rationalize him as not liking something that we like, because well, obviously he's adopted, so it
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
We have our way out to
Yes.
calm our minds.
Exactly.
Yeah. Did the nannying have any like sort of like intro to your show then, your podcast, or was this something completely separate?
No, it
Got
was
you
totally
invested in this?
separate. It was just, it was like a lot of podcasts that exist right now. I think it was a little bit pandemic inspired. Especially my co-host and best friend is a hairdresser, and so they were not allowed to go to work.
Yeah.
When everything was like super locked down. I was nannying and working at Whole Foods, so I was like, I still had to go to work every day, but they weren't allowed. They were like, I'm just in my house. I'm not supposed to go anywhere. I cannot go to work because, it's very people facing.
Yeah.
So they're like, what if we started a podcast? And I was like, okay. And we were just trying to think of, we were both like listen to a lot of true crime, but that is not something that we wanted to talk about because one, super oversaturated as far as the market goes.
Yeah.
But also, and I mean, we knew it before we started, and you probably know this a little bit, like when you research something, it just gets stuck in your brain.
Yeah.
And I didn't want, I'm fine with like, okay, I'll listen to this podcast about this grisly murder for 2 hours. And I'm like, oh, that sucked. But then I can turn it off and kind of go about my day. But if you're researching and writing, an outline or whatever and trying to get it to sound good, you're just like, yeah, I sat in this for weeks and it's all I can think about. And like, I have to get it out, which I mean, we experience that when we're talking about a certain movie or whatever, but at least it's fun. It's not, nobody died, hopefully. So
we were going to do, speaking of, you mentioned like having stuff get stuck in your head. Like we were going to do like a news based program, like separate from this show. And we quickly realized like how much of a time investment that is.
Yes.
And how difficult it is to stay relevant as far as like current news. It was so difficult because we would sit there and be researching like we'd have like one big story and then we were going to do like 2 or 3 smaller ones and just kind of sort of not necessarily connect all of them together, but just have it all flow into one show.
Yeah.
Through different segments. And we'd try and get like current topics, and the information would keep coming out so rapidly that we'd have to keep rewriting the show. And it's like, there's no way we can do this every week. Like it's just, things are changing too much in the time it takes for me to like record this, edit it and get it uploaded. The story's going to have changed. I'm like,
there's new information and maybe my opinion has changed about it.
I'm like, we just don't have the resources to process the show quickly enough to get it out in a way that it maintains like the integrity of the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would have those moments though, like while we're doing, like we did, I think 2 test episodes that we never released. I just recorded and edited them just to see if I could speed the process up or like just to listenability in general. And I would be researching topics and be like, it would just get stuck in my head. And the same things happens just with my writing. And I do a lot of like just like fantasy and sci-fi style writing. Yeah. And same thing happens where I'll like be reading something or I'll see like a specific like image. Like I like a lot of the custom artwork subreddits and things like that. And I'll see like a particular image and be like, oh, that's cool. And I'll think of like an idea for something and I'll research it. And that's just a constant never ending cycle that I feel like I deal with, where it's like idea, research, get it stuck in my head. And then something else comes along and then I'm hyper focused on that.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. There's that happens to us quite a bit. There was a time we covered The Brave Little Toaster, and that was just fortunately I did not get sucked in, but my co-host was just like listening to the soundtrack in their car. They like bought, because it's based on a book that this guy wrote. They bought all of his books and were reading them, and they were just like, I have descended into the Brave Little Toaster rabbit hole. Like this is my world now. So yeah, I can't imagine trying to stay current with like things like that. All of our movies our cutoff is the year 2000. So if it was made after 2000, we won't cover it for a couple of reasons. mostly because we are 35 and 36 respectively, and so it's
Mhm.
like that was right about, we were in middle school in 2000, and so that was kind of when we were, we weren't watching as many kids movies, we're moving on to other things.
Yeah.
But also the biggest reason is I hate the movie Shrek, and I refuse to cover it, and it came out in 2001, so I'm like, this is our cutoff. I'm not watching it, I'm not talking about it. And so I've worked it into the format that I won't ever have to.
What if at some point are you going to cover like the remakes of the Disney movies? I realize they came out in current day, but you could just rehash previous episodes and just
That's
pretend
true.
like it's the new movies.
We could, yeah, if we're still doing this in 10 years, 15 years, yeah. Because I mean, it's like, so I mean, the cutoff is 2000, but anything before is fair game. So we've done all the way up to like, Lady and the Tramp, which came out in the 50s. So
Mhm.
there are a lot of movies out there, and we only cover one a month. So we've got material for quite some time. But yeah, if we get to that point, we can do. The only time we've done a new movie was for our Patreon in November. We covered Good Burger 2 because it had just come out. And we were like, this one's a little more, it's not a remake, it's a sequel to this movie that we all loved as kids. So we're going to go ahead and cover this one.
It is interesting. Like you mentioned, like Lady and Tramp coming out in like the 50s. That's fascinating. Like when you think of a lot of these old Disney animated movies, you don't realize how old a lot of them are.
Yeah.
I don't know off the top of my head, like Pinocchio, things like that. That's probably like a slightly older one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pinocchio, Peter Pan, 101 Dalmatians. Those are all like 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
Really old. The other weird thing to think about, you think like, oh yeah, these movies are so old. And also it's kind of hard to, wrap your brain around now, given what the climate of, the world today. But Disney was not this like huge powerhouse that it used to be.
Yeah.
And it almost shut down so many times. Like there were multiple times where Walt Disney was like, let's just not make movies anymore and we'll focus on Disney World and TV shows. And like the idea that Disney would not make movies anymore is just baffling. But I mean, they were really struggling.
It's like, even today when you think about it, like obviously Disney, massive.
Right.
But just the idea of like having to get a film out and promote it, like it's so saturated. It's like unbelievably difficult to get the recognition for certain projects. You see that in any industry, like entertainment wise now, any film, like TV show, even like content creators, like on YouTube, things like that. It's so easy to make content and get it in front of an audience in general.
Yeah.
That it's hard to like stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
I pulled it. I didn't realize how old some of these were. Snow White came out in 1937.
Mm-hmm.
Pinocchio was 1940. Yeah, it's I thought they were all like 50s and 60s. I didn't realize they went back that far.
Yep. Yeah. Well, some of them, if you rewatch them, it's like, oh, that's racist. So definitely a lot older than, we watched these as kids, but ooh, you could not make that movie today. So
yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. It is also interesting watching like how they've changed it from like the inspirations for some of them, like how like Pinocchio is much darker, like Peter Pan much darker, the original content. I mean, even like Simba is from Kimba the White Lion. Not necessarily darker, but seeing these inspirations.
The source material is usually pretty dark. And I think Disney used to be a lot darker too. In fact, it was kind of like it was a bone of contention for Don Bluth, who has made he made Land Before Time. And he's done a ton of other movies, and of course I can't think of a single one right now. Rockadoodle, Secrets of Nim, like those are, he did Anastasia. But he straight up quit Disney over Fox and the Hound because they didn't kill anybody off. And he was like, it makes way more sense if you kill this dog. The anger and the like fight at the end of this movie makes more sense if you kill this dog off. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. That's too dark for kids. And he was like, you guys are a bunch of weak little babies, and I'm out. I'm going to make movies where I kill off main characters and make kids cry.
And they straight up murdered Mufasa anyway then.
Well, it's true. I mean, they did still kill characters, but he was just like, no, it needs more death. I'm leaving. So, but yeah, I feel like they were a lot darker and back in the 40s and 50s. And they put a lot more, I mean, you had to put a lot more work into them because you didn't have computers, everything was hand drawn and stuff
For
like
sure.
that. But also Disney was like, no, we're not churning movies out like crazy. We're not a movie factory. We are making one movie every 4 years. And
The
so,
animation style was super interesting. Like back in
yeah.
the day, like watching how fluid it all is,
Yes,
and
I
just like
love
the way it
it.
moves. Jungle Book
Well,
in particular, we have animation styles from the Jungle Book,
yes.
and it's
Yeah.
it's super. There's a specific scene I'm thinking of where it's just Mowgli walking through the jungle, like kicking the dirt. I'm like,
Mhm.
this is so like fluid and realistic, like the movements of it.
Yes.
Whereas like nowadays, I mean, there's a lot of animation nowadays. It's also very, very good. Don't get me wrong, but a lot of it is all right. Let's just do quick movements, and we can cut out like 15 frames here where we don't have to animate it or have the computer animate it.
Yeah, or it's too fluid to a point where you're like, well, this is not how a person moves. It's too
Yeah.
fast. It's too. But yeah, I really like the old animation styles. And once you're like picking them apart and seeing who's working on them, it's really cool
Mhm.
to notice like, oh, I can see that guy's like hand in this.
Yeah.
Like for instance, one of our favorites here, I say that because I'm sitting in our studio. Like one of our favorites at our podcast is his name is Milt Call. He's dead now, but he worked on so many movies like back in the day. Like he worked on Jungle Book and he worked on Sword in the Stone and all those. And you can see he has the signature thing that he does where his characters will like wiggle their head back and forth while they're talking
Yeah.
because it's really hard to do to get their like mouth movements to sync up at the same time as their head moving around so much. But he was
Yeah.
like, I'm so good, watch what I can do. And he did it all the time. And so once you know like that's his thing and you go back and watch these movies that he's like a part of, you're like,
Mhm.
oh shit, there it is again. And then there he is like in the credits. So
I wonder how much of
really
that
cool.
is used is them doing like I know Disney does like rotoscoping if you're familiar
Mhm.
with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I mean that's super fast. I think that's what they did for like the Jungle Book and stuff as well. I know they did it for like Cinderella and Snow White, things like that,
Mhm.
where it's literally they're just taking film and just sketching over it essentially.
Yeah.
And
Well, and they also reuse a lot of the same scenes. Like you
they
were talking
do,
about
yeah.
that scene in Jungle Book where Mowgli's like
Mm,
walking around. They used a lot of those in Sword in the Stone too. They were just like,
mhm.
now his hair is blonde and he looks like this, but they just changed this and this over here and just put it in that movie now,
They did.
which
I
I
think
think
they
is
did
cool.
that with what is the? Oh my god, I can't think of it. Robin Hood with the
Yeah.
bears. They have Blue, and then they have is it Lil Jon? I guess I think
Hmm.
is the bear in that one.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's just straight up the exact same one. They just changed the color of the bear.
Oh yeah, and I mean a lot of the scene, and it's the same voice actor too. So,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
like the scenes where they're like dancing with cousin Louis, that exact
hmm
so many of those dance sequences are in Robin Hood. It's just cousin Louis is now a chicken,
yeah,
and Baloo is well, he's still a bear, but
yeah.
he has a hat on this time. But yeah, it's just the same exact scene where they're just like, we already drew it. Why would we? Let's
hmm
just use it again. It's our stuff.
We I've tried doing some rotoscoping work, and it's I should not have gone with like a more realistic approach. Like we tried doing it with like live action, and then switching it to sort of realistic
Hmm.
animation, and oh my god, that was a lot of work for no payoff essentially. Because
Yeah.
I don't have a background in like animation or anything, but I was like,
Hmm.
oh, this could be an interesting attempt, and yeah, it was not good.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine it's hard. It's, easier now, but
Mhm.
it's still a difficult, and like you said, so much work and you're like, oh, cool, I made 5 seconds.
Yeah, there's like AI tools you can use. I think it's
Hmm.
called Absinthe is what I used,
Yeah.
where you basically uh, what I did was I just took sample videos where it's like 4 shots maybe, and you take them. I'd hand like draw the first uh frame from the scene,
Uh-huh.
do one at the end maybe, and then you just input it into the AI software, and it just automatically connects the two based on the video, and it animates it for you essentially,
Oh,
and it works somewhat well, but there's
yeah.
a lot of tear at some points, especially if the colors are sort of the same in the background, where it'll
Yeah.
get confused, and it's interesting to see, but it's not perfect. You really have to make it a point to like have everything stand out and visually like pop so that it can see like the difference between all the different colors and things like that.
Yeah.
I've been meaning to try and get into more stuff like just animation in general, like
Yeah.
rendering like 3D animation, but it's it's one of those skills where it just takes a ton of, I mean, a lot of skills or most skills are probably like that, where it takes a ton of time to really get good enough to where you can do it competently.
Mhm.
But yeah, unfortunately, I don't have an extra like 10 hours a day to learn how
Right.
to animate something.
Yeah, it sounds like you're already doing a lot. So,
It's yeah, like I mean, like you said, two jobs, same thing
mhm.
here, and then just managing everything else, trying to plan a wedding and move. So
Yeah.
it's
Oh, that's exciting.
yeah, you know, it's the difficult, annoying part is getting everything sorted out, I suppose. But
I guess I just got married a couple months ago and my mom
mm,
planned everything. So I was like,
oh,
whatever
you
you want to
have
do.
that
Cause I,
scenario.
I told her, I was just like, listen, I just want to do like a courthouse and then a super chill party. And she was like, well, we want you to have a reception. And I was like,
Mm,
knock yourself out. And she did. And it was beautiful. And I didn't have to do
fair enough.
anything, which is the ideal situation.
Yeah,
But
I mean, our situation is obviously I mean, my family is spread out all over the place, and then
mhm.
her family obviously being separate, and it's a lot of people who all have their opinion on it,
Yeah.
and like what should be done. It's like, thank you for the input. I will keep this in mind. Don't worry, I won't forget. You don't need to mention it again. It's all right up here in my head.
Yeah. I'll write it down. Great. Thank you.
I'll write this down and store this in this nice silver bin I keep trash bag in. Yes.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't want all that. I didn't want like any kind of hassle or stress. So I was like, I'm not
Mhm.
doing it.
Yeah.
And I didn't.
I, like I don't like big events to begin with or like formal things. Like I'm very
Right.
much like we have every year like we have a family reunion on for Labor Day, like Labor Day picnic,
Hmm.
and it's like even that like stresses me out because it's like 20 people, 25 people. I'm like, this is too many people. I want
Yeah.
to be able to sit down and have a conversation with somebody as opposed to show up and then have to talk to every single person separately and explain to them what I do for a living again.
Yes. Except like I just saw you last year, but no, it's fine. I'll
Yeah.
tell you all about it. And then of course they have their opinions. Yeah. I just mostly for me, the motivation was I don't like a lot of attention on me.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
I'm
I feel
fine
you.
to like go to a party. I'm fine to sit I'll talk to a bunch of people
Mhm.
and put on my game face and be like, or have like customer facing jobs, but the idea of
Yeah.
like as the bride being up there and being like, everybody look at Rennie, everybody look at what she's doing, no thank you, like that is a nightmare. So it's like I'm skipping all of that. We are not dancing, we're not doing this and that, like,
Mhm.
so our ceremony had like 18 people,
Yeah.
and then the reception was a lot more, but I was like, again, I'm fine to walk around and schmooze and be like, oh my God, thank you so much for coming, it's so good to see you, whatever, but like, don't look at me. Not
Yeah.
everybody looking at me at once.
We have our guest list basically made up of invites we're sending out.
Mhm.
We know a lot of these people aren't going to be able to come, whether it be from like on my side of the family, it's a lot of older people, like
Sure.
70s to 90s even. I'm like, most of these people are not going to be able to come. They're just
Yeah.
too old. They're to be able to make the trip. So
Yeah.
like our actual guest like number will probably be closer to like 50, which I'm still like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I said, my girlfriend wants to do the first dance and everything like that. And I was like, I will concede all of this,
Sure.
but I will give a speech. And that's my concession. Because
Yeah.
it's weird. Like I don't want to say I'm not a people person because I like talking to people, but
Right.
I've never
Obviously.
enjoyed like public speaking or things like that.
No. It's the
Unless
difference
I'm
of
in control of the situation to where it's like
oh,
I get to
yeah.
decide what's going on, like conversation wise. Like I didn't like that when I was in school, where it's like get up here and give a presentation, or
Yeah.
and when I was in college, like, we had a public speaking course. I
Oh
hated
God,
that
yeah.
because it's like,
Yeah.
hey, all right, we're gonna take turns. You get up here, just talk about this, whatever the topic on hand was, like what you did in the summer. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like I'm being put on the spot here. Excuse me, I'm being put on the spot. Like I don't enjoy that because like I'm having to come up with things off the top of my head, which I don't have a problem with in like a controlled setting, but if I'm being put on the spot in a situation that I'm already not like in control of in any way, it's unnerving. But at a wedding that I'm in charge of, even better. Like that's totally fine. But, oh, 49:30. slight technical issue after I said that we almost never have technical issues. So
Of course,
good.
it has to show you, be like, well, I can have technical issues.
So yeah, joke's on you.
Right.
But yeah, like I say, it's very different being in a situation in which like I'm able to dictate like the environment and the topic at hand, as opposed to being just thrown to the wolves, essentially.
I can see that. I think the biggest difference for me is whether or not I'm sitting down, because like I hated, public speaking classes, but I was fine with like creative writing classes where we went around and discussed what we were talking about, but I didn't have to get up there and stand, up there. And we've also, like, my co-host and I have hosted trivia a couple of times at local places, and they're like, yeah, but everybody's looking at you then, and you have a microphone and you're talking to everybody. I'm like, yes, but I am sitting down, and that's the difference.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what the actual line is for me. Like I said, like I worked in jobs where I was thrown into like, oh, we need you to like tell the staff like this or whatever, or like get everyone on the same page. Like when I was in high school, I worked at a grocery store and I was just thrown into a supervisory position because the person above me quit, and they're like, you're the only person we have that's competent enough to do this.
Yeah.
Please do this. I'm like, okay. So it's like me in high school in charge of high schoolers.
Oh my God.
And like, all right, here's what we need to do. And it's like, I mean, like I said, I've done that in numerous positions over the years when I was at the university working, being like, all right, everyone, we need to figure all this out, and like just leading a team. And I'm not sure if it's just like I'm more comfortable with public speaking now, like as I've gotten older, or if it's just being kind of backed into a corner, like, well, this has to get done, let's just do it, and just kind of putting my own toes to the fire, maybe.
Yeah, I do feel like being in charge is a little bit different, where you're like, you have to listen to me. I've been appointed as your leader, so you have to listen, as opposed to like, if you're just, let me just stand up here and tell you about this topic, and then it's like all you as the audience are doing is sitting there judging me. You don't really have to listen to what I'm talking about. I just have to give this presentation, and my teacher has to listen. You guys can just sit there and be like, wow, she's so nervous, what an idiot. Which of course is not what they're thinking. They're all thinking like, oh my God, I have to go next. Did I practice? Do I have my note? Nobody's focusing on you as much as you think they are almost ever. But still, of course, you're thinking like, everyone's looking at me and, judging me, I guess is the biggest fear.
I think that's fair. Yeah. Yeah. Because like I said, I think it's in certain situations, like people get stage fright, obviously. Like, I think that's more of like you're wanting feedback in some instances. Like you're hoping that you receive like positive reinforcement in some instances. And that could be part of it. Whereas, like I said, in a supervisory position, it's just like, this is the deal. None of us really have a say in this. Let's just get this over with. Yeah. And you're all sort of on the same page. You're just not looking for approval or denial in any way. It's just, this is how it is. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Like I said, at our wedding, I'm going to give my little speech at some point, and it's just going to basically be a type 5 where I'm just say whatever I feel like saying. Yeah. And that'll be fun for me. Maybe not anyone else, but it's your wedding. You're the one who's supposed to be having fun. So who cares? As they say, it is usually the groom's big day. That's what most people say, I think. Well, you should be having fun, is all I'm saying. Yeah. Yeah. So that'll be my way to make up for things, is me getting to stand up there and make jokes at the expense of my family. Yes. Good. But yeah, I was going back to sort of what we were talking about before with your show. Is there like a particular movie that you want to cover that you just haven't covered yet, that you're like, oh, I really want to do this one? Because I would imagine that's like one of the first ones you would cover generally. Yeah. There are some Shrek. That I'm like, yeah. We're just working our way towards Shrek. That'll be the last one. We'll cover Shrek, and then we'll be like, show's over. Oh my God, it does though. Every day somebody reminds me that Shrek exists, and I'm like, could I just go one day without seeing his big stupid face? Just one. It's either Shrek or The Lion King 1.5. Those are the two big movies that people usually request. Really? No. Oh, no, here we don't take requests for that reason. I'm like, I don't care what you think. No, that's so mean. That's not true. Let's see. It just kind of is more like we've compiled a list of basically every movie that's ever been made that was rated G or PG for the last 100 years or whatever. And it's. I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you have to like read out some of the PG movies? Because like, the rating system was sort of different back, 10, 15 years ago, even obviously pre-2000s. Because like Jaws, I think, was rated PG. You know,
yeah, well, until I think it was the mid 80s, the PG-13 rating didn't exist. So it was either G and then like parental guidance and then like you shouldn't see this unless you're adult. And then they're like, well, this movie isn't bad enough that no kids should come. But so yeah, it was they stuck PG-13 in there in the middle, like not that long ago. But yeah, sometimes we'll watch a movie where it's like, oh, this is not for children. And then other times, you know, sometimes our parents were a little bit not paying attention, and so we watched movies that weren't for kids, and we cover them anyway because they were a big part of our childhoods. Like one of our first episodes, we covered Liar Liar, which is not a kids movie. You know, it's PG-13, has a little bit more. You know, it's not like really bad, but some of the jokes in there are a little bit like, now your kid's gonna go ask you about that, and you're gonna have to explain what that means. And you know, he has like sex with his boss in one of the scenes, but my co-host watched it so much as a kid that they were like, I don't care that it's not for kids. We are covering this movie because it was part of my childhood in a big way. So we don't really weed them out. If it's rated PG, then we'll cover it. And then we'll be like, well, that wasn't for children, but our podcast is not for children. So, you know, even though we're covering kids movies, we're like, hey, if you're a kid, don't listen to this. This is not for you. So no, we don't really do that. It mostly is just, I mean, there are some movies that I'm probably looking forward to because I have like good memories of them, but we've covered a lot of my favorites. We've already covered Robin Hood and Angels in the Outfield, which were some of my favorites growing up. But we try to keep it, we mostly just go, okay, you know, this month we did an animated movie. Next month, let's make sure it's live action.
I see.
This month it came, you know, the movie was from the 90s, so let's like go back into the 70s, or just like keeping them thematically different. We'll try and sprinkle in every once in a while. We'll put one that has like a below 20% rating on Rotten Tomatoes because we're like, okay, this is going to be terrible. So, you know, if we did all the movies that we loved in a row, we would just be stuck with these movies that we'd never heard of or are really bad or whatever. So we just try to keep it different each month.
Is there a movie you have that's you definitively know is your favorite movie?
I think Robin Hood is definitely up there as far as like Disney movies go, or maybe Angels in the Outfield. I don't know. I really love baseball, so it might be that one. Although we watched that one and my co-host was like, this is so boring. That 75% of this movie is just a baseball game. I'm like, I know, that's why I love it. They're like, I hate this.
I'm trying to think of my favorite movie from that time period even.
Yeah. It's hard. There's so many good ones. But
I think Black Cauldron.
Really?
I really like that movie for whatever reason.
It's so scary.
It's creepy. Yeah. Like, I remember, I forget. Like, I don't think my girlfriend had even heard of that. And I looked it up. I was like, you never saw this? And she's like, no. I'm like, yeah, it's terrifying.
It's terrifying. Like, God, what's his face? The Horned King should be like, he deserves like an R-rated, like metal opera. Yeah. So that he can be like as terrifying as he should be. Because I mean, he's terrifying in that movie and it's supposed to be for children. But like,
they had a video game based on that movie too. And it's one of the jankiest things I've ever seen. It's just like, it's bizarre. Like the solutions to problems are things like you would never consider. Or it's like, oh, of course, that there's just this bush that you have to walk behind and suddenly like whatever item is behind here is here.
Oh, and, yeah.
There's a point where you have to climb a rope to get up to the top of the mountains. And it's one of those games where you have one save. Like you save the game and it's like, all right, now this is your fallback point. And you just save it. You could be in the middle of an action and you could save it. And if you screw up, it's like, oh, now you're just stuck here. So you could save state it and ruin your entire progress.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're climbing up a rope and you just have to hit, I forget what the buttons are at this point. But you just have to hit these two buttons in the perfect rhythm to climb it up, or you just fall to your death. I remember getting stuck there. And the end of the game, like you fight the Horned King. And if I remember correctly, you start on like a ledge up top in the room that he's in, and you just throw something down at him and that's it. And it's over.
Oh my God.
It's the most anticlimactic thing ever.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's kind of how the movie ends too, where it's just like, you know, if just one person sacrifices themselves, his whole deal is done. So
yeah,
there's like, it was the getting to the journey. It was about the climb, you know?
I was trying to remember like what the age range was for that, because obviously I haven't seen it since I was a child. I was like, I wonder if my little brother is like too old for it, you know, at this point, but maybe not. Like he's 10. Like
I don't know. That might be. It depends on if he's prone to nightmares or not. Because like,
yeah, it's sort of,
yikes.
I don't know. It's weird. Like he watches like, I don't want to say like Marvel movies are like mature, but like he watches like content like that where it's like there are horror elements to them. I forget what, not Marvel related, but like other films. I forget what my dad said they had watched, but who knows? I'll have to see. Maybe next time we go out and see them, we'll watch that. Watch it in time for the holidays. It's a really Christmas oriented film.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But do you have a favorite film outside, like past the 2000s, like the 90s rather, that you wish you could cover because it's something you thoroughly enjoy, but it doesn't fit with the theme of the show?
I think one that we will. So we kind of cheat sometimes, and we'll do those on the Patreon if it's like maybe a little bit outside of the, or if it's R-rated, or if it's whatever. Like we are probably at some point going to cover School of Rock because it's one of the greatest movies of all time, but it came out in 2003.
Yeah. I guess that was that old too. God, time flies by when you're
I know.
Just working your ass off.
Right.
You're slaving away your entire life.
Yeah. But yeah, so School of Rock, I probably Pirates of the Caribbean 2, which is again I think came out in 2001. So it's like right there on the edge. But I don't know. I kind of flip-flop. It's like rules that I've made up for myself. You know what I mean? Like, and there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't go, yeah, we're doing this movie that came out in 2001. Yeah, we still are never going to cover Shrek. Whatever. You don't make the rules over here on this podcast. But, you know, so maybe we'll do those one day, or we'll do them like as a Patreon. So usually what we do on the Patreon is we'll pick a movie that is rated R that kind of relates to the kids movie that we're covering that month, because they're like similar in fashion.
You watch like Flubber or something, and you have to find a similar themed movie that's like more mature, like the Goo Monster or something. Right. The worst example I could give was Flubber. I'm like, there's nothing at all that relates to that.
I know. I was like racking my brain, like, what?
I'm like, oh man, I've backed myself into a corner here. I'm like, there's nothing I can say that's going to be even close to relating to this.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the connections are pretty tenuous. Like, for instance, one month we did The Borrowers, which is, I don't know if you remember that movie, but there's like a bunch of little people living in their walls and taking their stuff. And then they're threatening to like tear the house down.
Little mice, right?
They're little people.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they're like tiny little. It's really cute, but they're tiny little people who live in the walls, and they like, oh, we use this bottle cap as our plate or whatever. Okay. So they just make little things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for the Patreon movie that month, we did Demolition Man, because I was like, well, Dennis Leary and his little guys are kind of like living underground and like stealing scraps and stuff like that. So very loosely connected sometimes, but just kind of
like Lilo and Stitch, and then on the Patreon you watch like Alien.
Yes. Like that was much better.
I'm over here furiously Googling like what are children's Alien movies.
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to pick, but I mean, so yeah, maybe we might do like the Alien connection there, or just kind of that feeling of like fish out of water. You know, this guy doesn't belong here and he's trying to fit in, so maybe pick a movie like that. I mean, for Christmas for Christmas we're doing Jingle All the Way is the movie that we're covering, and then on the Patreon we're doing Die Hard because it's a Christmas movie. They're both Christmas movies that star like big beefy action star guys. Whatever. That's all the connection that we need. Hopefully Jingle All the Way is nothing like Die Hard. You know, honestly, I've never seen it, so I cannot weigh in. I'm gonna watch it today though.
Just because a film takes place around Christmas, does that make it a Christmas movie? Is really the argument that people are making.
I know. No, I don't think it's a Christmas movie. I think there are Christmas elements, but Christmas is not the point. The point of the film is terrorism and kicking ass. So, which are not.
And nothing really says Christmas like terrorism.
But no, I don't think it's a Christmas movie. I think that, and this might be a little controversial, but I think most people who say that Die Hard is their favorite Christmas movie are just contrarians who are like trying to start, I don't know, they feel special or they're trying to start a fight, you know? And it's like, okay, congratulations. I'm so glad that Die Hard is your favorite Christmas movie. My favorite is Muppet Christmas Carol, and I'm having a way better time. So, you know, knock yourself out.
Yeah, I don't even have a favorite Christmas movie. I don't even know what I would suggest.
Then it just should be Muppet Christmas Carol because it's the best Christmas movie of all time.
There was a time where I liked Elf with Will Ferrell, And I feel like that's one of those movies that have just gotten replayed so often that I come to resent it just because of the amount of times it's been replayed. It
Yep,
has
I've heard
nothing to do
that
with the
from.
quality of the movie.
No, I totally get that. I've heard that from a couple people recently that they're like, I used to like that movie. It's just, I think it's such a safe, I don't know. Nobody's gonna get mad about watching Elf. That it's like it's Christmassy. Just put that on, whatever.
Yeah.
But
when I was in high school, that movie had come out of, I think it's like 2003 or something. Maybe I don't remember. But yeah, I was in high school. I remember it was like the day before we left for Christmas vacation, Christmas break rather, and they would play Elf on the TVs in the rooms, in the classrooms.
Yep.
But for some reason that I still to this day can't wrap my head around. Every time we switched class, they would restart the film.
Oh my God.
As though we hadn't been watching it in the previous class. So we watched the first 40 minutes of Elf like 6 times.
Oh my God.
I'm like, why are they doing this to us?
It's like we're leaving the realm of holiday entertainment and we're entering into psychological torture. Like this might be a social experiment that you're doing.
This is like a Groundhog Day scenario in which we just cannot get out of the first 40 minutes of this.
I need to know how it ends.
Is he gonna reconnect with his father? I just
just one time I would like to watch the end.
He's got the holiday spirit, but yeah. So that, and then just like I said, like part of it too is just how early they start promoting Christmas stuff doesn't help me in some capacity.
Oh,
I'm very much against like the commercial mindset of it, like of buying, like we don't go very big on Christmas at all other than the food, but like we don't go out and buy a ton of gifts and things like that. I really don't like that side of it. And seeing like Christmas stuff go up for sale in like August, September, I'm like, this is too early. Like we haven't had Thanksgiving, we haven't had Halloween.
No, I hate it. And it's by the time you actually get to Christmas Day, it's like I'm sick of it. Yeah, like I've seen all the things. I've heard all the, I mean, I fortunately have been out of the retail game for a few years now, so that helps a little bit because I'm not hearing Christmas music constantly. I'm not having to plan for Christmas, but working in retail makes it even worse too, where you're just constantly looking like 2 weeks, or working in, like retail food basically is what I was working in. So it's just like 2 weeks into the future all the time. Okay, this is going out. We have to plan for this, make food for that or whatever. And it's just like exhausting and you don't get to enjoy the now. And I mean, not to get too like existential in the chat about it, but if you're constantly looking to the future and being like, Christmas is coming, make sure you're planning for it, make sure it's like, well, what's happening right now today? Like, am I present in the current day? Do I even remember today? Or am I planning for constantly looking forward to like what's coming next and plan? Like I would like to enjoy fall. It is currently fall. And I would like to sit in it for a little bit, and do fall things. And then I'll think about Christmas is barely even into winter. 1st. I know.
4 days into it.
I do think they should shift all the months about, like all the seasons about 1 month early. Winter should start in November. Although then I guess Thanksgiving would be in winter, which is also wrong. So I don't know. Nobody asks me these things.
Yeah. Why aren't we in charge of this? Working in marketing though, like I feel exactly. I mean, I used to work in retail as well, but like working in marketing, it's like we are planning things out. Like I said, like August, like at the latest, we're planning things out for like the holidays.
Right.
We have to get everything on the same page. Like this is when we need to launch this like advertising campaign. This is when these Christmas themed like products should be going out. Like anything related to Christmas, like or Thanksgiving, like this is when this content should be uploaded, and it's exhausting.
Yeah.
I say all this while I look out my office window and I can see them having a Christmas themed carnival outside.
Yeah.
They have an arts and crafts festival, and it is exhausting at a point.
It's too much, and it makes Christmas less special because you're like, well, it's been Christmas for 3 months now, and I don't care anymore. So I try to keep it to a minimum. I didn't decorate my house until the day before the gingerbread house party that I threw. So that was like the 13th. So I was like, okay, we're like halfway through the month. I have a couple weeks of Christmas and then it's over. It's too much.
Part of it too is like the optics of certain things. Like my girlfriend's mom is very much one of those people that likes to have like a full Christmas tree, like display, like present wise underneath.
Yeah.
And it's like, as adults, like things are just expensive that we want. Like, anything that's reasonably priced, we just buy whenever we want it or need it. It's like, for gifts though, it's like, well, here's something I wouldn't normally purchase. and I wouldn't normally purchase it because it's hundreds of dollars or whatever.
Right. Yeah, it's like I
It's
either
like-
bought it for myself or I'm not going to ask you to buy it because that's ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I get that, but when we've focused, like we've shifted, like my family has shifted our focus from, you know, less into opening presents and more just hanging out with each other and playing games all day.
Sure, yeah.
So we just gamble on Christmas Day. We're going to be playing poker. So,
fair enough.
You know, just gotta shift what you do.
Yeah. No, like I said, like my girlfriend and I don't go crazy for like present wise. I think her mom just likes the visuals of it. And
Yeah.
so she'll just wrap like, what can I get that are small things that I can just wrap up just to have one in a tree? I'm like, all right, whatever, I guess.
Sure. I mean, you know, if it makes her happy, then
yeah.
Okay.
Then part of it too is just scheduling everything around Christmas, which is why I get particularly exhausted this time of year because it's like my family is so dispersed. It's like, all right, let's have Christmas Eve here. We'll have Christmas Day. We'll be here. And it's like, all right, now let's coordinate. We have 3 other groups of people we need to meet up with at some point.
Yeah.
So it's like scheduling like 5 to 6 Christmases every year. I'm like, oh God.
Yep. Yeah, it's rough.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty fortunate. I mean, I don't know. My family's pretty small, so it's just like, okay, we'll be here Christmas Day or going down to my husband's family, he's only about 3 hours away, like his parents. So not too bad. We'll only have the 2 that we have to, you know, kind of contend with. But yeah, I can see, you know, the bigger your family gets or the more spread out, or it's just like
we have a big family and they're spread out is my problem.
It's like, hey, you guys come here. Just consolidate for once, please.
We used to do that. Everyone would come home like for the like for Christmas, like everyone would come home. It's like, all right, we have 2 Christmases, like with, you know, everyone on my mom's side of the family. And then I'd go and like see my dad. And that'd be it. It'd be nice and easy.
Yeah.
And now it's like, all right, well, we got other like Christmas plans. We all have to go here to see this family member or this cousin or whatever. It's like, oh, geez.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, luckily for you, Christmas is 3 months long, so you can spread it out.
Even longer, it seems.
Be like, I'll come see you in August, which isn't like technically Christmas, but you know, I saw a Santa.
And
on
we
a shelf
just
the other
got
day,
done with Christmas in July, so it's almost a year-round thing at this point.
Ah, gross.
Ugh. But I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to touch on here before we wrapped up. Actually,
no, I don't think so.
Okay, where can everyone go to check out all your stuff?
Oh, absolutely. Our podcast is on all the platforms, all the big ones, Spotify, Apple, etc. It's just search Replay Rewind. And then if you want, like I said, if you want our takes on I always
on Shrek.
go to say, yes, I always go to say adult movies. I'm like, no. So we say grown-up movies. If you want some grown, which also sounds bad, but movies for grown-ups, I don't know. You can tell I work
It's like
with
a
kids,
parent
folks,
explaining
so
it to their kid. We're filming a grown-up movie. It's like,
this is for grown-ups. Yeah, I'm like, what R-rated movies, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But so that's over on Patreon, which is just patreon.com/replay rewind podcast.
And if you want X videos, they're over on Twitter.
Yeah, that's not what we did. Oh my God. My co-host was like, what if we actually did an adult movie once? And I was like, I mean, that would be hilarious, but also just awful. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, so for R-rated movies, those are all on Patreon. And then our Instagram is just Replay Rewind Podcast if you want to go check that out and see what we're up to currently. That's a good place to start.
Sounds good. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. I had a really good time.
Me too. Thank you for having me. Yeah.
Anytime. Yeah, I appreciate coming on and talking about it's a real throwback. Like I've not thought about like those films I used to watch as a kid since I was a kid, essentially. Yeah. So that was cool. I like talking about cooking and baking and things like that, even though I'm less experienced on the baking side of things. But
sure.
No, it was a really good time. So thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And everyone, you can go check out deadjesterproductions.live. Links in the description. Got all of our stuff on there. And thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time. Bye.